Okay. Please give me a heads up if I talk emphatically. So if my microphone is rubbing on my shirt, let me know.
Okay. All right. I think we might be live now.
Live.
All right. Welcome to Werewolf Radio, everybody. This is Justin Deschamps, your host. I am also the founder of Stillness in the Storm and host of Into the Storm and Edge of Wonder.tv. And I'm joined by a special co-host this week, Kalyn Montoya. Kalyn, how you doing?
Hey, Justin. Hey, everybody. How are you?
Good, good. And I'm sorry, I forgot to mention, you are from Awakening Humanity, isn't that right?
Yes, recently permanently banned for life from Facebook, Awakening Humanity. We'll get into that later. Really happy to fill in for Neil, dear friend and colleague. And I love what you guys are doing with the Werewolf podcast. I've been following you guys since you started. So thank you so much for letting me step in and kind of pinch hit for Neil while he is out traveling the world right now.
Oh yeah, really, I think we're gonna have a lot to talk about, and very poignant too, because of all the censorship stuff that we were pretty heavily affected by. So,
For sure.
so let me get into some brief announcements, and then we'll hit some news items before our guest today. So, be sure to check out A Werewolf on Simplecast and iTunes. Just search for A Werewolf, Simplecast, or iTunes on Google or your preferred search engine to find that. Also, if you like this and any other t-shirt that you happen to see that me wearing, you can always go to the Body for Awareness Project site, which is bit.ly/Body for Awareness Project. And lastly, one of the platforms that got censored is Edge of Wonder on YouTube. And I actually believe that one of their Facebooks got censored too. We'll get into that in a minute. But please go to eow.tv/newsletter to stay in touch with their updates. They've got a great newsletter, happens a few times a week, and that's a good way to stay up with all of the things that they're doing. And of course, you can go to edgeofwonder.tv to see my show Into the Storm and a lot of the other stuff that they got on there. So for our guest today, we've got a special guest, Lance Shuttler from EMF Harmonized, of course, the illustrious Kalyn, and we're going to be talking about Protect the Vote, which is an event that we're going to be having on the 1st of November, which is all about prayer and meditation for a safe, fair, and free election. Regardless of your political affiliation, this is something that's really important to us. So we're going to be talking about that. So brief, just a few announcements, and then we'll get right into the news here. I've got, for those of you who are fans of Into the Storm and Edge of Wonder.tv, I've got a new series that debuted this week. It's going to be a mid-season break, as I'm calling it. And it's going to be all about the war on intimacy, relationships, and love, which is entitled How the Media is Ruining Your Relationships. So it's going to get into not only, your standard relationships between, intimate relations between romantic partners, and romance and marriage and all that stuff in general, but it's also going to be about your relationship to yourself, your relationship to your body, your inner child, your relationship to the divine, other people, the civilization, all sorts of cool things. So go ahead and check that out, edgeofwonder.tv. And now let's get into the news. So Kalyn, I've got a pretty big one I think you're very familiar with here. There was a massive YouTube purge and Facebook purge this week.
Yes, intimately familiar with it.
Yeah. So let me just rattle off some of the channels, and then I'd love to get some of your thoughts on all this. So these are some of the channels that we know of: Destroying the Illusion, Red Pill 78, Praying Medic, Joe M, iPod, X22 Report, SGT Report, Edge of Wonder, Space Shot 76, Woke Societies, Amazing Polly, Mouthy Buddha, TV and Art, Truth and Art TV, Patriot Soapbox, Dustin Nemos, Into the Matrix, And We Know, Stropey Me, Just Informed Talk. I think Amazing Polly was one too, Sarah Westall, and True Reporting. So yeah, it was pretty big. Like, when did you hear the news? Like, what was going on when you heard about this?
The YouTube purge, what was that, last week?
Yeah.
We've had a few purges since then. So yeah, I heard about it last week. I can tell you, most people might know me as a marketing manager for a couple of the brands in our communities. And I was working with Edge of Wonder for the majority of this year. And it's something that we were always preparing for. We always knew that these were coming. We knew this was going to happen prior to the election. Brands that I've worked with and for, we're not fortune tellers, but we knew this was coming somehow. So if that lends to information that we disseminate, I hope that that's a feather we can put in our cap, because here we are 2 weeks from the election. Well, 3 weeks from the election, the big YouTube purge happened. 2 weeks from the election, we're now on second or third wave of a Facebook purge. So, like I said, everybody knew this was coming. We prepared for it as best we could. But, at the end of the day, how do you prepare for censorship? There's the big tech know the monopoly that they have. It was always designed this way. I think this was always their end game. I think they knew a lot of what we're experiencing in the world right now was coming for everybody. So I think that they knew that they had us by the whatever you're allowed to say on YouTube. Luckily, thankfully, we have platforms like Parler that came out that really got support from a lot of politicians, some celebrities, some news channels, these bigger accounts. That's, right, wrong, or indifferent. That's what people follow. And luckily they stepped behind Parler, because really the censorship it knows no bounds. There's no shame. They're not hiding any of it. Charlie Kirk was taken off Twitter. The New York Post was taken off Twitter. You know what I mean? So they're not hiding this, and that ultimately I believe will be their undoing, because now it's really all hands on deck for these new platforms and these other platforms, and there's even platforms being created right now that aren't even out yet, that are going to be a place for people that are going through the awakening process to inevitably land, that are going to be a safe, fair, open, truthful, and uncensored space for the awakening to continue to happen, because they're not going to stop it. This is the Great Awakening. It's happening. They know they can't stop it. So they can throw all the Wile E. Coyote and Roadrunner, anvils in front of our path as we go, but it's happening, and they're aware of it too. They're just fighting battles now because they know we're winning the war.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. One of the people that got censored in the Facebook purge, which happened yesterday, at least for us anyway, there was one a few weeks ago, is my girlfriend. And she's, she doesn't really post anything on YouTube at all. One of the people that works for me was purged just simply for being associated with my account. I can only assume. So, I think what this is going to do is, if it's going to make the situation of censorship personal. If you're a grandmother, if you're somebody on the left who doesn't think censorship is real and you think it's all a conspiracy theory, well, when you hear about your little granddaughter or your niece who doesn't post anything political getting censored, you're going to say, wait a minute, I see her posts. She posts like cat videos and stuff like this. Like, why is she getting censored? And I think it's going to make some people take notice for sure.
Yeah, I agree. And honestly, even a few echelons above that, there may be people in our families that don't agree with our side, and they may not agree with the information that we share, but they know that we're not a threat to national security. I mean, this is one of the things, when have just conspiracies ever had all of these operations enacted upon them? When did we suddenly go from being harmless, basement dwelling, tinfoil hat wearing, you know what I mean? Like derelicts of society, to national security threats? Like you're telling me all of a sudden now, and I'm a veteran, and I'm a military intelligence veteran. And that's something that I stand on when I have a lot of people tell me that, a lot of their kind of, the people from the sleeping many, right? Like a lot of times they do try to turn that weaponized conspiracy theorist definition or term or persona back on us. And so when I can come back with, actually, you know what I mean? I'm a very normal person, and I'm this and I'm this and I'm this. Like, you actually have to qualify yourself as a normal human being. And it's just something we've all gotten used to over the years. But it's been really good to be able to stand on that platform because it knocks off some of the preconceived notions that have been weaponized, that the term conspiracy theorists, how it's been weaponized against us. So now those family members, being kicked off of Facebook, this is the world, this is the global platform. Over 1 billion people, that is a seventh of the population on this planet, are on this platform. It's not optional anymore. This is where our friends, our families, our memories are, it's the biggest dossier, platform ever created. And we fed the information ourselves. So kudos to the bad guys for that. They're quite brilliant, if not evil, but quite brilliant. But you know what I mean? All of our family members that now they've lost that connection to us, even if they vehemently oppose our side and the information we're sharing, it's going to cause a ripple effect that their family members are being kicked off, that their high school friends are being kicked off. Every false flag that has happened from 2016 on, really from Vegas, since Las Vegas to now, has just continued to bring a wave of awakened humans every time. It's like they just keep undoing themselves. And I think, and now this is going to send waves back into the regular reality, because again, people, friends, families, coworkers, old high school buddies are going to wonder where we went. And then they're going to start asking questions. And that's what's going to inevitably undo, be big tech's undoing.
I completely agree. A couple more things I'll share about that, and then we'll move on to another story. Is I used to be somebody who would try to wake you up in 5 minutes, like I'm going to blow your mind, and now you're going to be, all part of the light and everything. And obviously that didn't work out too well, but
right.
But I realized, even in those foolhardy efforts, all those things that I said to people were seeds, because I sometimes a year, 2, 3, 4 years later, somebody would come to me and be like, that crazy stuff you're talking about back then? Well, I did some research and I had XYZ experience, and now, it turns out you were right, or it turns out there was something to what you were saying. And so, I think that's part of what the long game about this is it's not about waking somebody up within 5 minutes.
Right.
It's about getting them to think about something, or at least helping them to think maybe in the future when they have something more to think about.
I'm a very big proponent for, and I'm a recovering addict. So I've been sober about 8.5 years. And one of the tenets that I learned in a 12-step program, there's actually a lot of highly evolved, like higher evolutionary things that come out of that program. I was who really brought that program here, but that's for another podcast. Is to lay the tools at someone's feet and let them pick up what resonates with them. And if it wasn't for having that hard-earned lesson in some darker times in my life, I would have probably been a very different conspiracy analyst or realist or theorist or whatever you want to call us. Because when we first wake up, we think if we just tell everybody wants to know. And if we all know, then we save the world. And that's not the way it works, though. Actually, people don't want to know. They don't want their reality shattered. They don't want, they're not ready to come out of the matrix construct. And so the best thing that we can do is just live our own lives and be available for people when they are ready. They remember that seed we planted. They remember that piece of information we laid at their feet. And that's what they will follow back to us to go, hey, remember that one thing you told me? This doesn't seem right. What's going on? Because that's been every conversation I've had for the last 4 years. Unfortunately through Facebook and Facebook Messenger, which I hope my friends and family find another way to get a hold of me now. But yeah, it's really just like laying the path of light and letting them find their way when they're ready.
Yeah, agreed. Exactly. Well, with that, I have our next story for us.
Sure.
So you may have heard this, those of you who listened to the town hall, I want to say it was almost like a week and a half ago, potentially 2 weeks ago, with Trump and Savannah Guthrie. Trump talked about a study where 85% of mask wearers supposedly contracted COVID-19. And, a lot of people were like, what? That can't be true. That can't be possible. Well, I found that study and I've got a really good summary of it that I think we should talk about. So this is what happened. The CDC back in July conducted a study of people who had contracted COVID-19, and they asked them, how often do you wear a mask? Now, the majority of the people who were asked who had COVID-19, 71% of them said they wore a mask. And a good chunk of those people, another 14% said they wore a mask often. So we got people who basically wore a mask all the time, and then 14% said they wore a mask most of the time, but not literally all the time. So that's the 85%. So out of those 85% of the people, almost everybody was wearing masks. The remaining 15% were people who either barely wore masks or didn't wear masks at all. So out of all those people, they all contracted COVID-19. And they also asked people who didn't wear masks at all, who also contracted the virus, how often they were wearing, or they asked, sorry, didn't phrase that properly. They had another population of people who never wore masks, who also contracted COVID. And out of this sample size, they determined that 85% of the people who contracted COVID were wearing masks to some capacity. So that's the statistic that I heard. This is produced by Ben Swan, is that 33% of the people who wore masks out of the total sample size, because they have a control group, contracted COVID-19. Only 3% of the people who didn't wear masks contracted COVID. So that's an order of magnitude less. So what that means, just based on the sheer statistics, is that from a statistical perspective, if you don't wear a mask, you're a full order of magnitude less likely to contract COVID than if you actually wear a mask. Mind blowing. I mean, two big things on that. I'll turn it over to you here. First of all, that if wearing a mask doesn't actually help you stop getting from COVID by this own study. Now, it's not a complete study, but it's at least a small sample size, enough to get the conversation started.
Right.
And that not wearing a mask might actually be safer for you than wearing a mask. What do you think about that?
It actually reminds me of, it must have been a meme or a tweet that I saw recently that I actually haven't been able to get out of my head. I don't do all of my higher discerning off of memes and tweets. However, they are fabulous information disseminators, right? And so this one really stuck into my head, and it said, basically to your point, was, I don't know exactly the way it was worded, but it was to the point that that you must have to wear a mask to contract COVID because people that don't wear masks don't get tested. And it was like, so, and I was like, that's true, because I've never been tested. Why would I go get tested? I have no reason to be tested. I'm not, you know what I mean? I work from home. I'm not required to by any governing body. I have no symptoms. I've never been sick this year. You know what I mean? So I don't, and that's true, and if you think about it, and I think, of course, I think this meme was a little geared towards some political divisiveness, as far as like Republicans don't wear masks and they also don't get tested. So it must be the Democrats getting sick. But I had to glean the truth out of that statement too, although it was meant to be kind of an off the cuff, maybe a slight burn towards the right or towards the left. I thought about my own life, and I thought about people I had seen on social media, friends and family, and I know their political leanings, and I know their feelings on masks, and I also know who was getting tested and who wasn't. And I was like, well, I mean, the meme wasn't wrong.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. Well, to that point, you're right. Just like a Twitter post or a Facebook post or anything post really, or even the mainstream news like the New York Times, you got to treat all this stuff like a meme you just saw on social media.
Right.
It's a good clue. It's like a trail of breadcrumbs that might lead you to the truth, but you have to actually unpack that and investigate and fact check and be able to interpret those facts, because if you don't, who knows where you're being led. Now, one cool thing about that, well, not cool thing, one disturbing thing I read in this article as well is that apparently Dr. Fauci, who was, against masks in the beginning, and there's that infamous video where he's saying, oh, you don't need to wear masks, they're not going to prevent anything really. By the way, that's because there's like 10 years of studies that show wearing these cloth masks and the paper masks do basically nothing and actually cause harm, because you're inhaling your own carbon dioxide, and there's water that collects here. So it's actually through face mask touching, it's more likely for you to communicate things. Right. Fauci was one of was somebody who was actually telling people we shouldn't do any type of controlled studies on masks to see if they're effective. He openly said this. Yeah.
What a scientist.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, that's the first thing I thought of. Like, there's all these media talking heads that are like, don't you listen to the scientists? Why aren't you listening to Fauci? And yes, if you know anything about science, you hear him say that and you're like, dude, what are you smoking? Like, how can you think that's a pro-science stance? So
That is science 101. 101.
exactly. Yeah. So very interesting. Well,
It is interesting. That actually brings up for me, I was having this conversation with a friend of mine yesterday when I was, I'll say expelling about being banned for life off of Facebook. I told her, because I come from the left, and I think a lot of us in the community actually do come from the left, because we've, we are kind of that save the world, kind of demographic. And I think that a lot of us, that's how they weaponize the left against themselves, against ourselves, I should say, is, they kind of took that mindset and weaponized it. And that's how the evil guys up at the very, very top, that are bipartisan, really, infiltrated humanity, was through the bleeding hearts of the world, right? And so, coming from the left, I was talking to her and I said, what's really interesting, that really, really ironic about the last 4 years, is the way they weaponized Trump against the left, is the left is really, really the side of conspiracies. Because if you think about the left, we were the ones that don't trust the government. We didn't trust the food system. We didn't trust the pharmaceutical industry. We're the ones, it's the left that, touted against vaccines and, promoted organic foods and non-GMO and all of these things, right? So we are actually the original conspiracy theorists. But somehow in this, which is why it's called, psychological warfare, because it's an operation that's happening. The way that they weaponized, that against, is that now, if you talk to anybody from the left, all of a sudden Fauci is, the end all be all, and their news channel is just the gospel. And, Nancy Pelosi and the right are just trying, or the left are just trying, they're the pillars of truth and justice and law. And I'm just like, what happened to y'all? Like, we were the original ones that were trying to change the reality, and that's one of the heartbreaking parts about the weaponization of the president, against half of the American people, is they forgot that they didn't trust these institutions. They forgot that we didn't trust, that we knew inherently that they were lying to us, and that they did not have our best interests at heart or mind. But now, if you ask anybody on the left, I mean, Dr. Fauci is just, again, the pillar of science and truth and health, and you know what I mean? And it's just like, I don't even know what to tell them. You know what
oh,
I
I
mean?
know the intellectual consistency and integrity is just like flawless. I
Right.
mean, yeah, there's a pretty big premise in philosophy, epistemology, which is kind of like the science of discernment. It's, if you're going to make an argument, there has to be some level of consistency. And it's, if you just think, you ask yourself, the truth is the truth, which means our knowledge of the truth, which is a record, an internal record of reality, the outside reality, should be equally consistent. If there's one truth, then there should be one set of knowledge that is true. Yes.
Mhm.
So why would the information flip-flop? Why are things flip-flopping so much? I mean, yeah, I mean, geez, we could have like a 2-hour show just about all of the complete
Yeah.
inconsistencies, So
No, it's true. And it's because I really think, and this is all self-awareness. This is all because I had to come to this understanding within myself, is that's how they infiltrated the left. And they infiltrated, again, like I said, the bleeding hearts of the world, is they spent decades, like this is generational. They spent generations getting us to stop thinking for ourselves and just be emotionally charged about all things, right? And so we see something on social media, we hear a commercial on the radio, we see something on TV, and we instantly like jump to defend and jump to come to we're like the side of codependence. You know what I mean? Like, we're all trying to save the world in the most unbalanced and unhealthy way. And I am so speaking for myself. I was the hugest mouthpiece for the left. You know what I mean? But that's how they slowly over time deteriorated our discernment skills, while simultaneously just cranking up and charging and charging and charging our emotional responses. And that's how they deteriorated our everything. That's how they got us to stop participating in our republic, how they got us to stop participating in our nation. And and what's funny is I'm seeing the backfire now, because they've spent, again, decades and generations getting us to not vote, getting us to not trust the system, to think our voices doesn't matter, to just completely, disengage from the process. And now, because they weren't expecting Trump, and so now they're scrambling in these last 4 years to undo the last 40 years of deteriorating the left, you know what I mean? To get us completely desensitized to caring.
Oh, yeah.
I never voted before Trump. I didn't, because I didn't think my voice mattered. And I was completely indoctrinated in that operation.
Right.
And I know so many people that still are. And now I can only be thankful that that's going to help us. But at the same time, it's heartbreaking, because I would much rather have them wake up to the reality and have use their voice. But
Right. And we find ourselves here. So, all right. Well, now it's time to bring on our guest. So Lance Shuttler is the founder of EMF Harmonized. He and I and Kalyn have been working really hard to produce this Protect the Vote event. It's going to be a really cool event. Lance, I've been working with Lance for years. He's been writing articles and has been a really strong voice for bringing a lot of awareness, really eloquent speaker, and has a lot of cool information, especially about what's going to be happening at this event. So I'm glad to introduce our co-founder here, Lance Shuttler. Lance, how you doing, buddy?
Great. How about you two?
Hi.
Good, good.
The man with the plan.
So Lance, let's just start. I mean, what gave you the idea of doing this, and what do you think is some of the things that are important for people to know about this Protect the Vote event?
So, okay, I've been helping with mass meditations for a few years. I've helped with a few big ones. The one big one that I really helped with was back in 2017. There was basically all planets were moving direct in the month of January. You guys might remember that. And there was a big meditation event that I helped put together. And I've just known about this phenomenon, the Maharshi effect, for a while. And I've really wanted to keep getting this information out there and keep doing these things, because it's literally a technology for us to all use. Like our minds and our collective thoughts and intentions is a technology for us. So I had just been thinking about it for a while earlier this year. And then I just wasn't sure on the timing of when to do this. And then back in June, I actually read a tweet from one of our headliners, David Nino Rodriguez. And he basically just tweeted that praying and meditating together can help shift the consciousness of the planet. I mean, there was more to his tweet than that. And he didn't even talk about the election or anything like that. But for some reason, it was like a lightning bolt. The information came to me when I read that. Okay, mass meditation / prayer has to be around the election, either on the election day or right around it. And then, back in August, Justin, you and I started talking about this. And then, Kalyn got involved, and, we've all three just brought different aspects to this and really created something powerful. And I'm really grateful to both of you for so many reasons. And it's freaking exciting and awesome that we're doing this, because again, I always say this, and I know I've said it to both of you. I'm going to say it again. It literally is a technology for us to use. This is not woo-woo spiritual nonsense. This is scientific technology that we can use. There's this awesome quote by Martin Luther King Jr. Basically saying the people who love war, I don't remember, you both might be able to say it, but basically those who love war know how to organize well. So those who love peace need to organize well. And this is what we are doing. And this is a powerful way for us to do this.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. That's a great quote. Well, let's get some people jazzed up. I mean, let me just go through some of the folks that we've got coming on the event. We've got Laura Eisenhower, David Nino Rodriguez, the former boxer, Sasha Stone, the FBI man, or what is it, the X-Man? I forget this title, but John D'Souza. Of course, the three of us who are going to be hosts. We have Scott Comatus, who's going to lead the meditation, and Pastor Bruce is going to do a prayer that we're going to listen to as well. And then for some of the panelists, we have Ben Chasteen and Rob Counts from Edge of Wonder, Joe Martino from Collective Evolution, Nicole Froelich, Jason Frank, Mickey Huff from Project Censored, Crystal Tini, Adam Riva from Dauntless Dialogue. So it's going to be a really powerful event, I think.
Yeah. And we also, don't forget, we also have poetry. We have a guided meditation. And we have Ben Carroll from Inner Self Sustained that's going to be on the Tibetan bowls. Scott, how do you pronounce his last name?
Comatus?
Comatus?
Cotamas, yes.
Scott's going to be leading our guided meditation, and we're really excited for the poetry portion as well. Lance, I think that the lady that's coming to do the poetry, she's a friend of yours, isn't she?
Yes, very, very wonderful friend. Yolanda Fay is her name, and she has such a unique story in and of herself, but she's a true beautiful spiritual poetry that is empowering and just extremely uplifting. And I've seen so many people literally impacted just reading her poetry. And so I've actually read the poem that she has written, and it is powerful. Like, I love all of her poems, but like some stand out more than others. And I'll tell you that this one is powerful, and especially the way it ends. I think it's going to really move people. This is going to be one of the poems in a book that she's coming out with, and it's really awesome. I'm very happy that she's involved, and I know she's very excited too.
Awesome. And one point we really want to get across too is that this is, like Justin was saying in the beginning of the this is bipartisan, and this is like nothing partisan, honestly. This is just, if you're an American and you care about the country and you want your sovereign right to have a voice in what happens, like, please join us. But it's also it's multi-denominational. So this is a meditation and prayer, and we want that to cover all spiritual beliefs, all religions, all whatever works for you. This is, we're just bringing everybody together on November 1st, which is 11/1. So it's 11/1 at 11 a.m. is when we're starting. I think the meditation and the prayer with the poetry and the music and the crystal bowls and everything starts about noon. But go easy on us. It's a live event. Live events tend to take on a little bit of a life of their own. So roughly, we will definitely start at 11 a.m. The meditation is roughly between noon and noon 30. Yeah. And I think it's just going to be a really great time for us to come together and share a lot of tools to get through this super tumultuous time that none of us see ending after November 3rd. So hopefully we'll be able to take some tools, everybody that joins us will be able to take some mental, emotional, spiritual, physical tools with them, and just to help get them through the coming weeks ahead.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a fantastic event. And I wanted to ask both of you this, because I know you're like me, you're somewhat tapped into the pulse. I think what does they say? You have your thumb on the pulse of America. I think that's the phrase, something like that. And I just recently joined a church this year because I wanted to connect with some fellow people, and it's a non-denominational church, so it's not like the kind where you have like incense swinging around your head and you have to like do 50 jumping jacks just to get into the pew or anything like that. Like, it's very open. But you
what churches have you got to?
I'm being hyperbolic, so just poke fun a little bit. It's one of the things that he said this past weekend was that he's doing 3 weeks on the importance of the vote and our ability as spiritual beings to vote and cast our vote. And one of the things I've seen, because I'm into general spirituality into philosophy. I've hung out in New Age circles. I've hung out in like even anarchist circles sometimes. And there seems to be a pretty consistent trend of people wanting to, at least the very least, create a secure space around this vote. So, Kalyn, would you say that that there's a lot of energy, whether you're Christian or you're Buddhist or atheist or whatnot, there's a lot of energy around trying to stop people from manipulating into this voting situation that you've seen?
Yes, for sure. And I can only speak on my experience, and I can only speak on my filter of the world. So this will come out somewhat partisan because I have an opinion and a side, and I know how I'm voting, and and so forth. So for fear of alienating anybody, what I've personally seen is that many of us, kind of goes back to that we're not fortune tellers that we talked about in the beginning of the show, that we've just been reading signs on the wall. We've been listening to whistleblowers and insiders and following trends and patterns in these suppressed informations. We've also over the years seen the writing on the wall for election fraud, voter suppression, and a side actually infiltrating the results of this election. And what I have seen is that in the ninth hour, the side that we all believe will be the nefarious, the malevolent force in this, to affect the election in a very negative way. They have actually, projected that onto the other side, that we will now be the ones to do that. It's a great tactic, again, psychological warfare. I understand why they did it. But my fear is these are the makings of civil unrest, and these are the seeds that the bad guys are planting on the other side, because they knew that we already had their number, and they knew that we already knew all the ways that the suppression and the interference and so forth was going to happen and be enacted. And so their way of getting in front of their operation is to project that our side is now the one that's going to be interfering and so forth. So now we've got two sides that no matter what the outcome is, someone's going to cry election fraud. And it's a really awful position to be in when we know that it's actually happening to us, and we're watching the rest of our brothers and sisters and family and friends being told that it's going to happen to them. And it kind of leaves us in, I have found it a very helpless feeling, not really sure how to go from there and how to explain to that side of humanity that they just started believing that there would be election fraud. We've known it was coming for years. And it's like, how do we backtrack and show, it's undoing brainwashing, and it's undoing programming. And that's very, very, very difficult by its nature. So that's my personal take as far as one of my personal goals for protecting the vote is really protecting everybody's sovereign right to making a decision from their higher self, from their for their highest good, not based off of the fear and projection coming from them, from these propaganda arms of the bad guys.
Yeah. I think the idea of sovereignty is something that I think a lot of people resonate with, spiritual, non-spiritual, Christian, non-Christian, wherever you are, even if you're somebody who's a socialist, like the people walking around chanting they want socialism right now, the Antifa types, well, they're anarchists because they don't want a ruler, which means they probably at some level appreciate personal free will and volition and sovereignty. Mm-hmm. And when you really boil down sovereignty down to its essence, you get the idea that you have will. And the only way for our wills and our choice to matter in a society, in a world where there's somebody other than you, is for there to be an agreement. And the way that we form agreements is through consensus. So, I liken this to like a spiritual technology. Like Lance, the meditation bit is beautiful. And to add to that, I think our choice to intend on something and cast our vote through what we want to do is a very important aspect. And this is something that, we need to protect. And I think that the power of a prayer or meditation has a really incredible, almost magical component to this that maybe some people aren't familiar with. And actually, Lance, if I don't mind you asking, like, could you just give the audience a brief rundown of what the Maharshi effect is? I'm normally used to saying Maharishi, but Maharshi, is that it?
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, it is called Maharshi effect, and I also thought it was Maharishi effect. I'm going to answer that, but I'm also going to back up because I want to bring in
Sure.
a point that connects with what both you and Kalyn have said. So you asked earlier, basically, like, what are you feeling? The zeitgeist is right now. What's going on, and is prayer and meditation like a part of this? And I think it is, for multiple reasons. Like I've just been seeing more groups praying for for certain people, and also just in general. But specifically, when us three were communicating on who to get to lead the meditation, there was a person that we reached out to. I'm not going to say this person's name because they don't want it mentioned, but this person would have done it for us, but coincidentally or synchronistically, this person was also or is going to be leading a meditation at the exact same time that we are having our event. And this person is doing the meditation in a salt crystal cave. I'm not sure exactly where they live, but they have like a group of, I don't know, I think 12 plus people who are going to be meditating for peace at that exact same time. And so it's really like, there is this collective consciousness that is coming together right now around this time to create what we want and intend and decree and declare what is good and true and right. And so, tying that into the Maharshi effect, it's basically this belief that our collective consciousness has the power to shift physical events in this physical world. So basically, there's been different studies done showing how groups of people meditating and praying together has actually been able to lower crime, lower death counts during a war, specifically the Lebanon war, and lower the amount of bombs that were dropped in this war. And then they've also done many other follow-up studies behind this. That first initial study was so powerful that the scientists looking at it, it took them 2 years of going through the data continuously, and it was done through Yale. So they weren't going to just publish it just because they wanted to actually make sure it was real. And they basically got to the point to where they had no choice but to publish it because it was done with such rigor and held to the highest standards of true science. And they then asked other groups to go out and do it. And 7 other groups over the next 2 years did it and found basically the same things. It all lowered crime, boosted the economy, social harmony in those ways that it can be studied all went up. And they also took into account various like drifts and trends in data to make sure that nothing was just coincidence. Like basically the number they came to at the end of all these studies was that the chance of this just being a coincidence or occurring to statistical chance was 1 in 10 million. So they can confidently say that collective prayer and meditation works to shift the physical real, that shift the events in the physical world.
Powerful, man. Yeah. I'm a science guy. I went to school for physics, and I really like to have the raw data as much as I possibly can. And a study that goes to that level, it's one of these things where you're like, oh, you hear about something and you say, oh, that can't be true. So you try to disprove it, and then you end up proving it to yourself in the process, that kind of thing. So
yeah,
really powerful. Well, we've got a few minutes left. I wanted to ask both of you, what is it that, and I'll start answering this question myself. What is it that the vote needs to be protected from, and why is this, doing an event like this important? And I'll say that I think protecting the vote is important because, you know, our voice matters and consensus matters. And we, you know, if we really want to have a good world, we need to participate in the process. You know, there's few things in life that you can do unconsciously and just ride the wave of other people and have it to be good for your life. I'd say in my own life, and, you know, I could probably give a 2-hour lecture on this, almost everything you can imagine, the more you invest yourself in it consciously and participate in it, the better it becomes, not only for you and other people. So I think protecting the vote is important for that reason, and because there's a ton of manipulation. Kalyn, what are some of your thoughts on this?
What does the vote need to be protected from? Do you want the long list or the short list? Like a thumbnail, a meme? Like,
I thought you'd have a few things to say here.
Did you see my face? I was like, oh.
I saw it like, oh boy.
Good question. I mean, we could start, you know, there's the Luciferian angle, there's the no. Okay, so I would say immediately, like the immediate what the vote needs to be protected from is the weaponization of our information right now. And so whether you want to look at that as being protected from the propaganda arms, or being protected from the brainwashing, or being protected from the psychological warfare, you know, which are all interlooped with each other. What my hope for this event, because we decided to make this nonpartisan, you know, denominational, and we wanted it to just be the platform that everybody from all sides can come and meet in the middle, and remember that we're all one human family. You know, I really think that my intention and the best way that as for my contribution, that I can help everybody protect their own sovereign right to vote, is just really reintroducing prayer and meditation back into the voting process. Right now, everybody is they're so galvanized, right, wrong, or indifferent. They're very galvanized in a very psychotic way. Like the energy is very frantic right now. The energy is very psychotic, from both sides, from everywhere. We all think we're saving the world. We're all trying to save the world from our own view of reality, whether that reality is on either which side. So my hope is that by reintroducing meditation and prayer into the process, really pushing for them to take 5 minutes before they leave for the voting booth, before they lick the stamp and mail it in, before they get out of their car and go vote, is to just stop and be still and connect to their true self, connect to themselves, not connect to their favorite news channel, not connect to their favorite truther, not connect to their favorite whatever, you know, senator or party or whatever it is, but connect to themselves. Because if they can do that, then no matter how they vote, no matter what they do, no matter what they say, they're going to bring their highest self into the process, and they will learn something from this experience. So it's not just this frantic, psychotic throwing baloney at a wall because that's what said brand told them to do, or news channel, or favorite celebrity, or whatever it is. You know, it's just really going in and getting still and trying to find that one little, very, very small, still, quiet space we all have within us that is irrelevant to the reality around us, and hopefully making a decision from there. And you know, if in that moment, you know, they're sound in their decision, and they have made their decision and their vote from a sovereign place, regardless of how they vote, regardless of the consequences of that vote. They've done it from a sovereign place, so then that's a platform for them to evolve forward after the election with whatever the results are. So that's the protection that I'm hoping for in this platform.
Yeah, I echo that. I think those are great points. Lance, what do you got for us?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything that Kalyn said. I believe it's really the same thing, just put in different words, that, you know, there are nefarious forces out there that want to corrupt and invert everything that's good and true in this world. And, you know, elections should be about kind of what you've said, Justin, making our voices heard in equal ways. Like one vote should count as one vote. And if elections are manipulated, not everyone's vote counts the same. Those numbers get skewed for in obvious ways, but also in ways that are not easily measurable. And it just disrupts the sacred process of, we all have free will and individual choice to create and live our lives as we wish, and then also melding that together collectively. And, you know, in relating to votes and voting processes, you know, those voices need to be heard in those sacred ways. And if the elections or voting processes are corrupted, it strips us from those sacred rights. And it really creates a lot of negativity in obvious ways and also not so obvious ways that have massive ripple effects in many, many different ways. And so I think basically protecting from nefarious forces trying to disrupt what should just be a natural, normal process.
Yeah, I think there's, you know, in this generation, it might not be as apparent, but for most of human history, when anything that affected a society or had related to honor or an office or taking on a duty had to be done, you had to invocate a higher power. I mean, there's a reason why you swear on the Bible or some spiritual work of significance when you're going to do something in law. And from an oath perspective, there's the person who's giving the oath. So the person you're taking, you know, who's saying, you say these words, but there's a third party there, and that's the divine, the creator, the source from which the technology of taking oaths actually comes from, the one who watches over the work. And so there's an aspect to voting that, you know, we can bring in, at least in my beliefs. You know, you don't have to believe this. I'm just saying, for me personally, I think for the first time in my life, when I go to vote on November 3rd, or I'll probably vote a little early just to be sure, because I don't want any shenanigans to happen. But when I go to cast that vote, I'm going to be invoking my concept of the divine and what I believe is the right choice in relation to that. And I think that has a lot of power, because the forces that we're trying to protect the vote from, they don't believe in these things. They believe in sowing doubt and mistrust and creating division and divide and conquer between people so
Chaos.
that they can, exactly, chaos, so they can step in and, you know, solve the problem of our inability to have trust and fellowship with each other. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
They caused.
Exactly, they caused. Well, real quick, I'm going to go through our sponsors, and then we'll have some closing comments. So everybody, protectthevote.live, protectthevote.live. We got great sponsors for this event: Awakening Humanity, Christopher McDonald, Collective Evolution, Denise Boland, D'Souza Media Group, edgeofwonder.tv, EMF Harmonized, that's your outfit, Lance, Free Food Now, Inner Self-Sustained, King Charlie Prince, My Patriots Network, My Soul Mat, Personable Media, Red Pill Living, and Stillness in the Storm. They're all going to be sponsoring and spreading the word on this thing. Any last statements before we close out the show, everybody? Kalyn?
Yeah, I actually wanted to bring it back to the censorship really quick. So Justin and I actually put together an open letter after we were banned for life. Have I mentioned for life? Like non-reviewable for life. Yes, banned for life from Facebook. And just to kind of put a thought seed for, you know, people to contemplate. Literally try to imagine your life without Facebook, because I didn't think I would ever have to. And I mean, I worked for them through a third-party agency. I'm a social media manager. They literally took away my matrix profession, like my 3D profession. You know, not many people are going to hire social media managers without access to Facebook. You know, but really just I woke up today having to I had to recalibrate reality because Facebook is no longer a part of my reality. And it's funny because I actually had to delete the apps because I kept opening them without realizing it. Like that's how ingrained it was, you know. Now in my world, it's personal and professional, so maybe a little bit more for me. But yeah, just contemplate waking up and Facebook being gone, like just gone to you. It's surreal. It really is surreal. So I just wanted to, Justin and I, like I said, we put together an open letter to kind of the entire big tech censorship. So if you guys don't mind, I just wanted to read it really quick to the audience.
Please.
Awesome. So open letter to Censored America. The purge continues. Tuesday, October 20th brought a fresh wave of permanently deleted personal accounts on Facebook. All admins of the Stillness in the Storm Facebook page, to include Justin Deschamps, as well as myself, Kalyn Montoya. Some of you might know me as Kalyn Ann on Facebook and social media, of Awakening Humanity. We joined the ranks of many fallen accounts, groups, and pages who worked diligently to disseminate suppressed information to the American people and the rest of the world. Many of us knew these purges were coming as we got closer to the election. We tried to prepare as best we could, but nothing really prepares you for being banned from the platform meant to keep us all connected. Our family, friends, and connections, most spanning our lifetime, all lost to us with the click of a mouse, not to mention the professions and livelihoods unequivocally intertwined with these platforms. We know that this community continues to feel the blows from big tech across all major platforms as brands and personalities you have come to trust for information continue to be purged. Fear not. We have all hands on deck to focus our resources to the remaining platforms where you can still find us, and creating new spaces for humanity to land as they continue to awaken from the lies, deception, and corruption of our current reality. These purges will ultimately be big tech's own undoing. Could irony be any sweeter? As you hear of more personal accounts being banned, please help to pick up the banner and march on. Help to spread the word of purged accounts and where you can still find the brands you trust. Help to bridge the information across platforms and promote these new platforms to your friends and family. We don't want to create more echo chambers. Our ultimate goal is to bring all of the human race together on platforms that believe in truth and freedom for all. You can still find Justin and myself on Parler and Twitter, and we can put our handles in the live chat in the comments on Stillness in the Storm YouTube. And please be sure to register for the upcoming free online event on November 1st. Protect the Vote, Meditation and Prayer for a Fair Election. Register at protectthevote.live. Thank you, Justin, for having me. So grateful to get to step into Neil's shoes for a few days. For a few an hour or so. And yeah, just thank you to Werewolf and Justin and Neil, and of course my amazing co-host Lance.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, Kalyn. Lance, thanks so much for coming on. Go ahead and check out Lance. I think where can we find your work? Is it?
I'm on Facebook right now,
Okay.
Lance Shuttler, and then my website, EMF Harmonized. But there is one thing that I want to end on too,
Sure.
that a comment and then something for us to just think about. So during the last election, I don't think many people knew about this, and I didn't actually know about it. I think maybe it was like a day or two before, because it came on me pretty quickly, or this information came about. And it was that there was several groups around the world, but specifically in the US, who did flash mob meditations at polling booths in the US. And then there were people also meditating around the world at that time. And, you know, we all know the election outcome of that. Trump won. And I just wonder, like, I'm not trying to insinuate anything with this because I think it's good to ask questions. What did those meditators and what did that meditation, how did that impact the election? Like, was Trump going to win regardless? Did that help to shift it in his favor in ways? Why did that happen? You know, I don't know the answers, but I think it's an interesting phenomenon. And if it would be measurable, it'd be really interesting data to look at. Like, how did this happen? Why did it happen? Why did these people meditate influence the election towards that result? But either way, regardless of who someone supports, praying and meditating for peace and love and fairness and equality is always good, regardless of the outside outcome. You know, it only ends up well if we're praying with love and peace in our hearts.
Couldn't agree more. Well, thanks so much, both for you, Kalyn and Lance, for coming on. We're going to have a great event November 1st. That's a Sunday at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Go ahead and check out protectthevote.live. You can go ahead and register there. We'll have special invite information. We also got cool swag you can wear to help spread the awareness about protecting the vote, because that's something we're going to have to do well beyond this election. I can guarantee you that. Mm-hmm. So thanks so much, both of you, for coming on. Don't forget, everybody, go ahead to iTunes and Simplecast to get this podcast, It's a Werewolf. And you can find my work at stillnessinthestorm.com, as well as edgeofwonder.tv with Into the Storm. All right, stay conscious and use that power of consciousness well. I'll talk to you all later.